Hey, Sanjay.
How are you?
I'm well. How are you?
Well,
Good to see you.
too. Chiming in from a hotel in Columbus.
I thought you might be in a hotel.
Yeah,
Columbus, Indiana or Ohio?
Ohio. They have their road school, but it's 4 times as big. So
Oh, wow.
we have an office out.
And
Sweet.
I guess we need to recognize the attendees. I know Sanjay. I know, and okay, Colleen's here, and Heather's here. Is there anybody else in our virtual crowd that needs to be acknowledged? I guess not, or any virtual attendees?
Yes, Sally Zalonis is online, so certainly acknowledging her.
Okay. All right, if there's nobody else, then we'll move right along, Wayne, to reports.
Certainly information in front of you this evening. It's a little bit of a different format related to different activities that are happening in the various TIF districts. Certainly many names that you'll recognize from previous conversations. Certainly, I'm happy to run through any of these in specificity if you would like to speak to any specifics. Certainly items of note, certainly in the Zionsville Economic Development area, the original 106th Street TIF. Certainly tonight we'll be talking about Nicholson Orthodontics. Certainly still a capital with the 700 East TIF, a project that as we were talking about earlier, most likely this particular TIF area was not of anybody's particular knowledge here when they joined the RDC. This is actually a project that was annexed in, had a lot of different things parts moving with it, but certainly just background for you on that. And certainly projects in Creeksa, we'll be hearing from Halicar this evening, as well as we can discuss a little bit related to charitable allies and anything else you'd like to cover.
Does the board have any questions for Wayne on reports?
So Wayne, on the 700 TIF, that was approved by the zoning district or rezoning or is it the Board of Zoning Appeals that?
Right, I can speak to some history. Certainly in 2009, this TIF district was created in Whitestown in 2000, I want to say 15 or so, through a disannexation and annexation into the town of Zionsville, brought its TIF area with it. So what that did is it brought the original information from the original creation of the TIF. It brought its zoning commitments that also came from Boone County, and then forward that information, conversation with the then now new developer of the property with some very specific information brought to the RDC at that time, circa 2015 or so. And subsequent to those dates was a request to modify the commitments that were established with the property. One that's mentioned in here is the residential component. It, at one point in time, was an age-restricted style community, and the town modified that commitment to allow a more flexible use of the property, which embraces the land use that's mentioned here, which is the multi-family 179 unit development that we'll hear more about this evening.
Thank
And Wayne,
you.
I know I've asked this question in the past, but has the Black Acre Brewing Company renewed their permit?
Not as of yet.
Okay. How long does it take until it expires?
The permit is currently expired, and
Okay.
we're working on those conversations currently to see what the next move is.
Okay.
All right, moving along to old business. We need adoption or approval of the minutes from the August 23rd, 2021 regular meeting.
I'll move to pass the minutes.
We have
I make a motion.
make motion. We have a motion
Wait a second.
and a second. Are we doing roll call?
We will do roll call.
All right.
Mr. Patel,
Yes.
Sanjay, we can't hear you. Sorry.
Yes.
Well, we still can't hear you.
I'm not muted.
I can hear him.
I saw that you said yes, but we can't
I
you.
hear him.
I hear Sanjay.
Yeah,
Can
me
you hear
too.
us?
well, let's move on for now.
Yep.
Mr. Ezra,
Yes.
Ms. Swanson,
Yes.
Ms. Spillane,
Yes.
Mr. Berg.
I
Oh,
don't
we're
even-
passing the voting. I'm so used to reading the cue card here. And we'll go back to Mr. Patel.
Yes.
Thumbs up. Let the record reflect a thumbs up. And Ms. Hiddle,
Yes. Can you not hear me either?
no audio either.
Okay. All right. So that approved. What, that's all of us. That's 5-0. All right. Item B under old business is Creekside Corporate Park, Lot 1, letter of intent from Bradley Companies.
And staff is happy to speak to that. I don't believe
Yeah.
anybody from Charitable Allies is online or from Bradley. Certainly staff and your attorneys at Ice Miller and the applicant all continue to work forward on negotiations through the term sheet as you've seen, and Kent, and specifically you've been on a few phone calls
Mhm.
as this group delegated that authority to Sanjay and Kent to work through. So no real update for you, just other than the conversations continue.
All right. That concludes old business. New business, Creekside Corporate Park, lot number 2, letter of intent from Halaker LLC.
Certainly the applicant is here this evening. If you'd
Okay.
like to hear from Mr. Maurer
Absolutely.
or other representatives, yeah, please.
Yeah. State your name and believe have to do where they live too, right?
You can give his corporate address.
Yeah.
Todd Maurer, I'm the CEO of Halaker LLC, currently located at 9245 North Marine Street in Indianapolis, and looking to relocate into Zionsville. We have just begun our process of starting to design a building for Lot 2 at Creekside Corporate Park. Excited about the prospect of being in Zionsville in the corporate park. It's a challenging site. There's a lot of different aspects that we have to work through with the grading and the utilities and other things, but we're optimistic that this is a project that we can come to fruition. It would be the corporate headquarters for Halaker. We are approximately 20 people in our office and looking to move into Zionsville. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I'll let Wayne speak to that we've had discussions with Zionsville Council and working through a more detailed term sheet than what was presented on the agenda tonight.
Correct, and that's a very standard methodology to start moving that conversation forward. And so certainly the term sheet, and certainly this group can recognize if assigning that work to Ken and Sanjay, for example, to continue those conversations.
Absolutely. So this is just a letter of intent, and then we need to work on the terms.
Correct.
Okay.
I mean, certainly if you're supportive of the concept, the letter of intent, certainly
Absolutely.
any specific questions about the project.
Sanjay, I'm assuming that you are on board with this also?
Yes. I don't know if my audio is coming through though.
Yeah, there we go.
Yay.
Yeah, we can hear you now. Okay,
Yes.
so
I think we should follow the same process.
yeah, so absolutely. Wayne, what else do we need to do with this?
No specific action items tonight.
Right.
Certainly just continuing to move the ball forward. Certainly your positive words of encouragement are certainly valuable here. And we'll just continue to move
Absolutely. I think we can move forward with this. Do we need to appoint Sanjay and myself to that, or?
certainly if that's this group's
If that's
choice
what you
to
wanna do.
Could
recognize.
I ask a question?
Yeah, fire away.
May I ask, and if it's on here, I apologize, the size of building that you're wanting to build?
Well, we're not exactly sure on the size of the building yet. I'm not an architect by trade. I've built a lot of buildings and bought a lot of buildings, but we'll defer to our architect as we are now working through that process to figure out what the right sizing is based on the way the lot's designed. As you may recall, the lot is kind of narrow and then turns. And so that's going to limit our ability to on how we can design that building. But we're looking for a building that's going to be a multi-story building that's going to have some space available for office on the second floor. On the first floor, office space, as well as some maybe a small, I'd say event space, but not big event space, but more for community groups, not-for-profit groups to be able to take advantage of the park setting there and to be able to use the facilities for that purpose.
That's great. It's exciting.
Thank you.
I guess I'll ask a question to Heather. If there's anything within the letter that needs that we need to change or do differently than as we move forward with all the different aspects, if that makes any sense.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay. I don't believe that there is. I'll double check and look at the current language in the letter, but I don't think that we need to update anything.
Okay. So at this point, I guess we'll take recommendations from the board to move forward with the letter and work on term sheet. Correct?
Sounds fine. Certainly, whoever your committee is of two to not violate a quorum, certainly advantageous to identify that as well.
Typically, Sanjay and I have been doing that, but I assume that we would just move forward with that.
Sounds good.
Okay.
So-
Sanjay, any additions to that?
No, that's great. Thank you.
Okay. Wonderful.
Thank you. Appreciate you hearing from us tonight.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you both.
All right. Under new business, we're going to move on to item B, which is grant recommendation consideration. Zionsville Community Development Corporation is recommending that Nicholson Orthodontics and Shiloh Springs Enterprises LLC at 95 East Oak Street. So then I guess the two items underneath that, they are recommending that we grant them, I believe it's 50,000?
50,000, correct.
All right, so do we have people who want to speak about that? Go right ahead, please.
All right, Paul Kite, Strongbox Commercial, offices at 65 East Cedar, representing Nicholson Orthodontics and Shiloh Springs Enterprises. So I just wanted to sort of outline what we've been doing. This is a 6,000 square foot addition to the existing building, the existing house that's there, if you're familiar with Nicholson. So we're at the southwest corner of Oak and Elm. And this would be south of the existing home, and the building would face Elm. So it would be so it really sort of trying to increase the visibility of the practice, and also the current building is not adequate for a 21st century orthodontics practice. If anyone's been in there, it's just a home really that's been well taken care of. But Dr. Nicholson, after 30 some years, I think, has outgrown the building and wants to keep his practice viable into the 21st century. And that's the purpose of this. So it's approximately $1,650,000 investment into the new building that will be attached to the existing building. The existing building is 1,600 square feet. So essentially quadrupling the size of the coverage of the property. And in addition, the current gravel parking spaces that are there will be paved and brought up to current standards. So there'll be 6 spaces, including 1 handicap space. In addition, Dr. Nicholson's entered into agreement with Bob Harris to park behind his building there. So there'll be 9 spaces that will be available to Dr. Nicholson, his staff, and patients during business hours for Dr. Nicholson, which is Monday through Friday, And then after business hours, the new paved spaces will be available to the public for evening parking for restaurants and such. So that's much needed, as we all know, in the village. I put together for you all to consider is a bit of a spreadsheet. I don't know if we have that available to put up or not, but if not, I'm assuming not. I'll pass this out to you all. Showing a bit of a payback of the investment the town is making into Dr. Nicholson.
Thank you.
Folks that appreciate it.
Property. So you can when you get back to the mic here. Okay. As you can see there, the grant request is $50,000. And we looked at both the property tax impact and the effect on the village and parents who are dropping their kids off for the 45-minute session to get their braces adjusted and such. Having done it myself, not with my kids, that seems to be about the amount of time you spend there. So on the property tax impact, so this is we're just looking at the additional investment in real property, not the existing investment. So the existing property is assessed at about $450,000. Oh, there we go. So the existing property is assessed at $450,000. So we're spending $1.65 million additional dollars on in the property invested. And so we're projecting a tax increment, which would be less than the actual investment, typically, depending on how the assessor looks at it, of $1,237,000. We're using a mill rate of 2.07%, which I believe is the current Zionsville urban mill rate. Seems a little low, but that's good for Zionsville. Just a comment there. So that would be an additional annual tax increase to being paid by the property of $25,600 a year. They currently are paying about $8,500. So that makes sense given the amount invested. So a payback period, just looking at from a tax standpoint on $50,000 is 23 months. And then trying to put some numbers just to what it means to the village to have a business like this that's would bring people into the village during the day, which I think is a critical issue for the village, is to have more daytime traffic as opposed to evening traffic. So he sees approximately 200 patients per week. So let's assume he's operating 50 weeks a year. That's 10,000 annual visits by patients and their who's ever in charge of them. So assuming that 30% of those parents or guardians are staying or going for a walk in the village and spend a little bit of money, and say their average expenditure would be $15. That's $45,000 per year in average expenditure by visits as a result of Dr. Nicholson's practice. So that would be a 13-month payback period just on that alone. Dr. Nicholson is expecting to open his new operation with 14 jobs, and that he would over time add 3 more to the practice. And we're assuming that the existing building, which will be renovated for professional use and is restricted to office or professional use and not retail, per our earlier agreement with the town, would generate 5 additional employees. As a side note, Dr. Nicholson's average wage equates to $35 per hour. So that's a significant benefit, in my opinion, to the town. So based on all that, I'll stop talking and answer questions.
Any board members have questions for Mr. Kite?
I appreciate this list to see the return on the investment and what the business is bringing to the village.
It's not my profession, but it's, it's what, it's the reality of.
It's
of
super
what-
interesting, and it also doesn't take into account what those employees are contributing as well to the village.
Correct.
Eating out at cobblestone for lunch.
I was thinking, I love cobblestone for lunch.
This is Colleen. I'm curious about precedent for this kind of grant request. Just if there are other benchmarks that we could compare this request to.
Wayne, can you help us with that question?
Certainly your history on grants over the last 18 months is been COVID based. And so that's been a very different activity. Certainly prior to that, this group heard requests for an entity named Triphase, requested $50,000 of assistance. That was a relocation of a corporation from another county into Zionsville, occupied Just Marketing there on Bennett. So that was a $50,000 request for renovation of a facility. Other grants have been awarded to Hotel Tango, $125,000. That was a project that renovated the former Pizza King just south of the downtown. Brought that property onto municipal water and town sanitary sewer. So there was several environmental benefits to that project. Other grants have been funded, certainly Healer Health at 10 grand, certainly just with some business asset and relocation to Zionsville. Some other projects provided assistance related to some grease traps. So definitely the requests of recent days, of recent years have grown more sizable, certainly always focused on that return on investment for the community, and also or answering some life safety challenges, environmental challenges. So this is a project that is a touch different. I think what the applicant and what the CDC focused on was that capturing and solidifying this particular use in the downtown, as well as the creation of that new tenant space. So that's answering Colleen's question there, Ms. Hiddle's question, and providing just a little bit additional data.
I recall the grease trap and the Hotel Tango and some of the other prior grant pre-COVID requests, but they always seem to be associated with a particular thing. And this feels like just a request just to offset, which certainly valid. I just wanted to better understand precedent. So my other follow-on question is just around budget, and forgive the question again, because I know it's a sensitive one, but what is for these grant requests going into next year?
I think that is a very good question. We do have a fund inquiry sheet in front of you that the board members have. So, I mean, I assume that this would go into 2022. Is this? I mean, I know it's 2021, but
Correct, and I'm certainly thinking this group recalls as you get towards the end of the year and how staff is reacting to that end of year call out in terms of budget. Certainly, if the dollars are there in 2021 for us to encumber these dollars and then pay them out in 2022, we would do that. And certainly, given the current asks and projected spends out of the economic development line item, that's our anticipated action, is to encumber these dollars here in 2021 and do the spend in 2022 and not impact 2022's line item.
Colleen, does that help answer your question?
It does. I really appreciate that. I just want to kind of go on the record and just say, I think Dr. Nicholson's practice has attracted a lot of people to Zionsville that aren't Zionsville residents. And, I'm certainly in support of supporting this grant request. I just wanted to better understand kind of the, annual expectation along these lines, number one, and obviously number two, if this was to assigned to a particular aspect of this property improvement. And it seems like it's not, but certainly well documented. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Wayne, can you speak to I don't have the application in front of me, but the CDC application had windows and siding and et cetera. And when you and I spoke last week, you had mentioned you had provided some additional detail that may be good for the group to hear in regards to how this money would be utilized.
Certainly, and it's often very common that when these projects first approach the town, the dialogue revolves around, this is what this project will look like based upon the dollars that it has available to it. And if there are different things that you would like to see as a town, enhancements to the facade or extra dormer windows or other changes to the roof line, or creation of parking lots or other items that are either contributing to the community directly or indirectly, such as the streetscape. These are items that end up as on the discussion table. And certainly I think that's very relevant in this particular conversation, as this project has been through the Plan Commission, the Board of Zoning Appeals, the Zionsville Architectural Review Committee, and the Zionsville Community Development Corporation, all working towards the best fit and the best project that could be seen, certainly in terms of both facilitating the existence of the current practice, acknowledging that market pressures and changes will always exist, and certainly the creation of this new tenant space is another upside here. But to Sanjay's specific point, Mr. Patel's specific point, you have Elm Street itself has been changing over the years in a positive way, dramatically, in terms of the Lions Club renovation, the Lemon Bar moving into a former car wash, believe it or not, and certainly this project here. So this is we've seen a lot of improvements on Main Street, and we will continue to see that. And here is another street that is literally going through that same regrowth and rebirth, if you will. And certainly this is a part of that conversation. And certainly Mr. Kite here can speak to any specifics of the project that our exterior is being enhanced per se, which may not have been the case if dollars from the town generally were not available.
Thank you, Wayne.
Certainly.
Any other questions?
This is Colleen. I move to grant the request by Nicholson Orthodontics for $50,000.
We have a motion to approve.
I'll second.
All right, we'll do a roll call vote.
Certainly. Mr. Patel,
Yes.
Mr. Ezra,
Yes.
Ms. Swanson,
Yes.
Ms. Hiddle,
Yes.
Ms. Blank.
Yes.
Thank you very much. It passes 5-0. All right, I believe we're moving on to item C. Thank you. County Road 700 TIF presentation. Is that you, Matt? Please.
Thank you, Mr. Ezra, members of the commission. My name for the record is Matt Wright. I'm an attorney for Denton's in Indianapolis. I'm here tonight on the County Road 700 Economic Development Area. And as you will note from your packet, we're not seeking any action tonight, but given the kind of unique posture of this economic development area, we thought it would be a good idea to introduce the project and explain a little bit of the history relating to how this project ended up in Zionsville and what its plans are going forward. Initially, I'd like to introduce the landowner, which is the entity, it's Pock Family Farm, the principal of which is John Demery, who's here tonight. And then the developer entity for what I'm going to call the second phase of the project with Scylla Capital is Felix Shallett, Jeff Reesner, and then they also have James Wilson with them this evening, who is an advisor for them and a Zionsville resident as well, along with John. If you could go to the first slide. In your packets, we provided kind of a brief PowerPoint, and what I thought I'd do is kind of weave the story and history, if you will, that we all lived as residents of Zionsville through 2012 to the present with respect to this property, and then describe it a little bit in more detail. But speaking broadly, and Wayne referenced this, back in the 2012, 2013 era, the town of Whitestown and the town of Zionsville had more or less contemporaneous and competing annexations pending. And those annexations overlapped with regard to territory. And so in 2013, Whitestown and Zionsville entered into an interlocal agreement. And that interlocal agreement was essentially a settlement with regard to the boundaries that they drew between the two jurisdictions. One of the elements of that settlement was the potential for this property, which is the property outlined in red on that slide is the phase 2 Adler Apartments, but it includes that Adler apartment piece, the Get-Go, which is the property immediately east of County Road 700 that abuts 334, and then the property east of the Lowe's and west of the Adler apartment site, all part of this same EDA. And so the various property owners that were located within, that owned those properties and that were at the time located inside Whitestown's jurisdiction were given the option, they weren't required to do this, but they were given the option of essentially opting out of Whitestown and petitioning to be back in the town of Zionsville. And as a Zionsville resident, as we all are, the reason I say back into the town of Zionsville, kind of back into the fold, if you will, is that the property is in Eagle Township. And so the leadership of the town at the time, I think, felt that it was appropriate for this economic development opportunity really to be Zionsville's. And so they created the mechanism, if you will, for those property owners to petition to be back in Zionsville. And they did so, including Mr. Demery. And so one of the conditions of that petition to be disannexed into Whitestown and incorporated into Zionsville was that the terms of an existing project agreement, which called for the use of TIF funds to support development costs on site, would be carried forward once the property was returned, if you will, to the fold and back in Zionsville. And so fast forward to 2013, that project agreement is executed by the property owner in the town of Zionsville. And then later, Zionsville in 2016 kind of took steps to formally confirm the economic development area inside Zionsville's boundaries, and also updated some of the infrastructure and other items that could be financed with TIF bonds. And that was done by resolution of this body back in 2016. Subsequent to that, the phase 1 of the project, if you will, did go forward, which was the approval of the Get-Go convenience store. And now we're at phase 2. You want to go to next slide? This shows kind of a little clearer depiction. The Get-Go is kind of up in their upper right. 334 is the major artery that goes east-west at the northern edge of the picture. Then that parcel A is the Adler apartment piece. Parcel B is the remaining portions of the mixed-use development. Just to give you an idea of relative size, parcel A is around 9.6 acres. And then the balance is around 30, 26, okay. So I think the total composition was around 40 acres when you added it all together, maybe a little under.
I'm sorry, Matt, that's just A?
A is the 9.6.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you go to the next slide. And this is showing kind of the projects integrated together as far as future potential development pattern for the mixed use project. As Wayne mentioned, there was a commitment modification done earlier this year, which was very well received by the town and by the neighbors. The residential uses that surround the property on the east and to the south worked very closely with Adler Apartments to develop a landscaping package and buffering package along their southern border of the multifamily project, the northern border of the residential piece. And there's essentially no remonstrance. They spoke in favor of the proposal at the public hearing, and it went forward very well. Go to the next slide. This is giving you kind of another perspective of the multifamily project. This is a good slide because it shows the surrounding residential uses. So to orient you a little bit, because it's a little bit confusing, north is to the right. So what you don't see on this picture is 334, which is running east-west. So you can get go in the far right-hand northerly piece there. So as I mentioned, we're at the phase 2 component now, which is we anticipate bringing forward the Adler Apartments for a development plan approval later this winter, or maybe early in the winter, with an idea of being able to break ground this coming spring. We have submitted information to the town's financial advisors demonstrating what our anticipated new investment will be in that property, as well as a pro forma that shows the income from the property. The financial advisor specifically asked for that as a way of valuing what the future tax revenues from the site would render relative to phase 2 alone. We also then plan on having more detail with regard to phase 3 once we get to that step. The precise uses and mixtures of uses on that property are still being determined. I know Mr. Demery is having ongoing discussions with the town of Zionsville about that to see how they may be able to assist with that project to assure that it's able to go forward with appropriate infrastructure support, including appropriate access, which has been something that has been an ongoing dialogue with both the town of Whitestown and the town of Zionsville. In fact, John's actually meeting with the mayor and her leadership team tomorrow to have kind of an update type discussion on that as well. So what we would be looking to do in the coming meetings is to put before you a proposal for a developer purchased bond, similar to what was done with the Appaloosa Crossing project, where it's done with no recourse to the town, meaning that the town is not responsible for the repayment of the bond. It's just the tax revenues from the project itself that would go to the repayment of the bond. And the developer is actually the purchaser, provides the funds for the development costs that are to be covered by that bond. As kind of a creative way of financing needed infrastructure and making sure the project's of the highest quality and generates the most tax increment for the town. We thought this would be a good opportunity to open up any questions that you may have. As I mentioned, our entire development team and property ownership is here this evening, and we appreciate your willingness to put us on the agenda tonight and give this introduction. Thank you.
So sometimes I'm sharp as a marble. So what you're saying is that site A is the next phase.
Site A is the next phase.
And then ongoing discussions are on site B.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, and just to be completely forthcoming about that, those discussions have largely for parcel B have largely circled around access, making sure there's appropriate access off of 334 and traffic circulation within that commercial component of the overall project. And so that dialogue is ongoing. As you might expect, it's a very prominent piece of real estate. It's why the town, I think, valued having it within our jurisdiction. And so there's a great deal of interest in it, but everyone has a shared interest in doing that right, including having the the necessary access to serve that project.
I have one more question, and I know we're kind of on side A right now, but the largest parcel, and I'm sure this is still up for a lot of discussion moving forward. I was thinking that it's squared off as 132,000 square feet. Is that within the Zionsville ordinance on how big that spot can be? Is it 150?
You mean the size of the buildings we show there?
Yeah, I know. I'm moving forward a little bit, but
Yeah. I think that's the representation there is.
I know it's.
Yeah, it's more conceptual in nature. Certainly, we would. Yeah, John, if you want to come on up.
Sure.
John Demery, 615 Starkey Avenue, used to be road, now it's Avenue, Zionsville, and Pock Family Farm LLC. So when this was brought into the town of Zionsville through annexation, and just to kind of clarify, this was. It was presented as optional, but it was more of a request. Zionsville came to us and asked if we would consider agreeing to the annexation into Zionsville. So as an inducement to do that, being a Zionsville resident, I certainly wanted to do whatever I could to help the community and be a part of that. But for it to make sense to us, we had to be able to maintain all the same rights with Zionsville that we had with Whitestown. And one of those rights was the ability to develop greater than 100,000 square feet. So the restriction that applied, like in the Walmart case on Michigan Road, would not apply here. So, great.
May I ask a question? This may be a silly question. Why is the retail at sort of on the back side?
This is purely conceptual.
Okay.
Purely conceptual.
Okay.
So we've had conversations with a number of different potential anchor users. We probably if we're able to fulfill our vision, it likely is going to be perhaps a grocery anchored tenant, something of that nature. And and so under that concept, we developed this conceptual layout with the anchor tenant, and then B shops attached to that. But again, this is conceptual.
Sure.
It could be that we ended up doing one large anchor, like I'm just using examples. None of this has anything to do with what may actually happen, but like a super target, if it was something like that, perhaps it would be a standalone. If it was a XYZ grocery, perhaps it might look something more like this.
Okay.
So.
Because this wouldn't be married to the Anson restrictions, like I'm not competing with Meijer or Lowe's or.
Correct. Yeah. The beauty of this site, it is not part of the Anson restrictions. So we are able to do things that, cannot be done at the Anson development.
You
But
could
if you're-
probably, go ahead, Colleen.
No, please, Kate, go ahead. Finish your thought.
At what point do they figure out the impact to schools through a project like this? I'm sure it's down the line, or does that even come into play?
Impact to schools
Mhm.
in terms of,
Number of students?
you're speaking of in terms of
Lot
the.
A.
Lot A, we
Site
went
A.
back to Lot A,
Go back to Lot A.
because that's the residential.
I would defer to Matt on that.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was gonna ask that same question.
Yeah.
Well, it's an interesting scenario because that discussion took place in front of the Plan Commission, as I recall. And I don't know that it was specifically answered as far as a precise number on the school impact, but you have to remember what they found themselves addressing was that the TIF had already been created. And there was an option at that time to modify the commitment in order to allow a relatively small multifamily project that in some ways helps leverage the broader commercial component of the project. So to answer your question, I don't think there's been a precise school impact study, but I think the thought was, given the relative balance of the site and the fact that they were already in a TIF district, that it was an overall good. Now, having said that, one of the things that you all will be able to look at as we go forward is you'll be able to look at precisely how much increment does this generate, how much does it leverage as far as additional commercial development, and kind of make your own judgments as you work through the process as far as, you know, whether the Plan Commission's land use judgment makes sense.
Because the density has been changed. It's already been approved, no?
It has.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I don't know that the density was changed much as what the commitment modification allowed was for a multifamily land use other than assisted living, senior housing.
Okay.
So I would add to this that the development of these additional units is a positive impact on the future development of the commercial property next door. Rooftops are what attract retailers. So the more density we can get in that regards, the more positive impact it has on the future development of this site. So we view that as being a very complementary development to what we're trying to do next door.
I guess I just like to say, so I represent the schools, that we, of course, welcome the opportunity to sit down and look at the numbers with the folks doing the development. We've often found that we use IBRC projections and we're able to do some modeling that we've found to be much more accurate than sometimes the modeling that comes before the development happens. Obviously, my concern is tipping residential because we're sort of disproportionately burdening, we're disproportionately spreading the tax burden across the student pop or the residents, I guess. But anyway, I would welcome the opportunity to put whoever in contact with our CFO to give our input about it as well.
Absolutely. Yeah, we'd welcome that. That's part of the reason why we wanted to have a discussion early on in the process. Yeah.
Any other questions?
I'm not sure I have a question per se, but just a comment. It's Colleen Hiddle. I think that it has nothing to do with, this particular proposal, but more just aesthetically, as a resident. I think we need to keep in mind that is a kind of an entree gateway kind of entrance into the town, in the same way that we've talked about that on the end where the lock place was taken out, right? I like the idea of us being really thoughtful about this being, the beginning of the residential aspect or aesthetic of Zionsville. And it's a comment. It doesn't really have anything to do with this specifically, but I do recognize that this is an important property in that respect.
Okay. Anything else?
We really appreciate the opportunity. Appreciate your questions. Look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Now, I believe item D, moving along here, we are going to postpone until next month. Is that correct, Wayne?
That's correct. Just from a data gathering point of view, our consulting team was not able to fully pull together the presentation for this evening. Staff supports moving that conversation to November. That does push that conversation right up against our annual report that we will be presenting next month anyway. And the consulting team as well is working on that project. And so it just feathers together nicely the opportunity to mix both those conversations together. We will provide we will provide notice of this future offering to the taxing units as we did back in June. We provided a letter to those same taxing units indicating what percentage of increment would or would not be available. So this is just to follow up on that conversation and creating an opportunity to continue that conversation. And certainly handed out to you this evening is a list of Fund 490 expenses year to date for Fund 490. This data would have been provided in the budget presentation, but since it's not here, we'll just cut this particular sheet out to provide to you. This gives you data on your expenses. Again, I mentioned 490 in particular. That's the original economic development area. You do have several TIP districts. Only one other of those has a debt assigned to it, which is the town hall TIF district here. That increment is used to pay down that debt associated with the mortgage. But here are those expenses for your reading, and happy to take questions.
Any questions for Wayne on the budget process? All right.
And I would mention as a part of your budget process is that this group has a microloan fund, and this is a fund that you'll see a report on as a part of this conversation. The microloan in itself has not been used for several years. I want to say since 2015, and this is a fund that we would like to see that we move forward into the future in terms of being a solid economic development tool that we can leverage as well. You may recall that we created the Community Development Corporation as that tool to provide that funding resource. You have that entity going through a conversion to a 501c3 corporation as we speak. We look to see that happening fully in January of next year. And so lining that conversation up with the microloan fund and reinventing that would be, I think, an ideal conversation to have here in the near future. But in the short term, there's actually an ordinance that created the microloan fund, and that ordinance specifically mentions the bank that the microloan fund is housed at, if you will, and that's the State Bank of Lisbon. And as part of that conversation, the staff would appreciate the flexibility. Not that the State Bank of Lisbon isn't good and doesn't do good work, but certainly having an ordinance that specifically ties that fiduciary requirement is something that at least your CFO is focused on seeing broadened. And so, and specifically moving that account away from the State Bank of Wisdom is something that we're focused on having a conversation about. So certainly want to bring that to your unique attention, and certainly have actually the minutes reflect that I brought this up because that is a part of this conversation as we move this forward with that ordinance update.
So I guess that brings my question. I would ask a question in that I don't know that can the RDC change that ordinance? Is that something that we can do?
No, the ordinance itself was created by the town council. So
right.
So certain steps would need to be taken to vet that particular process. But in terms of making that modification is to broadening the opportunities to make sure we select the best financial institution that can assist us with the best rates and the best tools seems to be a prudent topic to pursue.
That does make sense. So is this a topic that we need to add to next month's agenda?
I'll turn to Tammy to help. She's not online, but certainly I'll check with her with the CFO to see exactly what that conversation is going to entail. I mean, again, you do, as you know, you have an ordinance that created that microloan fund and how that functions. And certainly that ordinance was modified at least once since it was originally created. So that would definitely be through the end of the year, we'll be bringing this up again.
So I guess I would say, and Sanjay, please jump in on this. maybe if we could see some, how the ordinance is written and maybe some background to us all, so that when we talk about it, we have a little bit more understanding of what's up. And I guess my other question would be, if the RDC cannot change the ordinance, are we looking to maybe ask that the ordinance be changed?
I'm still not sure.
Sorry about that.
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
So that's what you're looking for.
We'll be researching the modification process now and how we can make all those things happen.
Okay, all right.
Why has it not been used for the last few years?
Well, it goes back to the creation of the Community Development Corporation. It was an entity that could provide loans, but there was never a request for a loan per se. And when incentives were discussed, it was always in terms of a grant. And so this fund has sat dormant because it never was really asked to be leveraged in terms of a loan. And your grant funding was fairly healthy and has always helped move that incentive conversation forward. But as the town has grown to 30,000 people, 67 square miles, having a few more tools in the toolbox is something we're always focused on.
Yeah, I'd love to learn more about just the amounts that's there, how it works, and if it could be advertised to our local businesses as a tool.
Correct. It'll be advertised once we have it back in line. It's the current funding in the account is about $183,000 or so. And it's again, we look to advertise it and discuss it when it's legally defensible to use. Right now it's laid dormant. It's functioning under an ordinance that did not recognize the CDC as in existence because it did not exist. So there's a few tools that need to be updated, including like the ordinance itself, in order to be in a position to then begin advertising and promoting the program.
Good, that'd be great if we could get that done.
Yeah, absolutely.
Would somebody from this board need to represent it at the council to get the ordinance changed?
Yes, I mean, certainly that advocacy is going to be helpful, but we're working towards all of those conversations, yes.
And then how is it in the ordinance? How is there a way to replenish?
It is had a one-time funding award that was sent to the bank, and those funds have recycled through based upon paybacks of the loan amounts that have gone out. But there's been no action to replenish the funding at $183,000. It seemed like a pretty solid number that could function on its own. But certainly those are all great conversations for here in the future.
Yeah, so I would say that the RDC needs to, have some information on the ordinance and maybe, how its inception came about so that we all can study it, so to speak.
Certainly.
And so what you're saying about the funding of the 183 was done through the RDC, and they just the board at that time decided this was the amount to put into that loan possibility, right?
Correct. It was 2011, and
Okay.
the fund was created. The program was created. There was the board membership was identified at that time. In 2013, the ordinance was updated. Luke Fency, this goes back that far, was the president at that time and assisted with those modifications.
Okay. Great.
I did have one more question here on this. What's distributed in this fund inquiry? There's no dates. Will there be dates in our 2022 fund? I mean, I guess that's a proposal, but still, like, I see like notes here that say February, March, or whatever, but the actual dates aren't on there.
Certainly, these are uniquely, this document is coming right out of what we have in a reporting document, and certainly if there's
That's what I figured.
modifications, we can meld those 2 or 3 different data sets together to create a more complete analysis for you.
Yeah, that'd be
The
helpful.
more detailed, the better, please.
Yeah, I know. I was like, I got a little. I started to get a bit worked out, so I'm getting there.
All right. Anything else weighing on that particular topic?
No.
Okay. Moving forward to item 6, other business. I believe that we have some claims to approve. But I actually have not lost, but I can't find the list of what, is that
It's
correct?
on the back side of this document.
Aha.
And I was like, I thought it was.
Ah, there we go. All right, so we have claims that need approved. I'll just kind of go through them here. We have one for Ice Miller, a payment to Ice Miller for August retainer of $6,000. Another retainer, a payment for the September retainer for $6,000. And one for Trees R Us for engineering and clearing trees at DKI building.
Correct. So certainly the Ice Miller retainers can certainly speak. Description covers, I believe, the topic at hand. On the tree clearing, you may recall presenting, I think 2 months ago or 3 months ago, the concept of needing to clear some trees just to the east of the DK Pierce building on lot 6. So the trees that were cleared were actually on town of Zionsville owned ground, which was lot 7. And so that cost was something that was to be assigned, as we discussed, to the redevelopment commission, and would be paid out of the engineering line item for the amount of $1,985.
And that is listed in the 490 also.
Correct.
All right, so we need a motion.
Make a motion to approve the claims.
I'll second.
All right, a roll call vote, please.
Mr. Patel,
Yes.
Mr. Ezra,
Yes.
Ms. Swanson,
Yes.
Ms. Hiddle,
Yes.
Ms. Spillane.
Yes.
All right, the motion passes 5-0. All right, no other business, I believe. Do we need to open up to any other comments? I don't
Certainly the
believe.
board the commission can do as it wishes.
Okay. Seeing no other information that we need to go over, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
All right. Next meeting is November the 22nd at 6:30.
Thanks, Kent. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Yeah. Did you sign yours?
Oh, do we need to sign that? I guess we do, huh?
We need to-
Just grab one and
I remember.